Glad to have you here, Ms Legalista, aka Attorney Sheila. Another update involving the Tyre Nichols case. This one we're probably not liking so much.
Yeah.
If you recall, Tyre Nichols was involved in an incident with several Memphis police officers back in January 7th, and then he ultimately died January 10th. Well, there have been charges placed against five of those officers. Six were actually terminated, but they've been charged with second-degree murder, assault, kidnapping, and the other one I can't think of, oppression. They've been charged with that. They've had their first appearance, but apparently there was this other officer who was on the scene also. We've been hearing some rumblings about this for a while because you could discern this person in the videos that were previously released by the police department. But it's only been in the last couple of days when a lot of this information has really been made public. The decertification documents, there was supposed to be this hearing that he didn't show up for. But I'm going to go to Attorney Ben Crump's Facebook page because this is where some of this information is coming out. And he also has an article website up there that we're going to go to and take a look at some of this and break this down because unlike the other videos that I did involving the officers, I had the decertification documents. We went through them from beginning to end to see why the Memphis Police Department was requesting decertification of those officers. We saw exactly what they had been accused of doing, what policies they had been accused of violating. In this case, I'm getting it a little bit secondhand, but that's okay. We're going to go to our secondhand sources so that we can break down exactly what's going on. And I'm going to start with Ben Crump's Facebook page. I've already pulled up the article so that you can see what's going on here. He's got a picture from the night of the incident. So it says here, former Memphis police lieutenant Dwayne Smith, the on-scene supervisor during the police beating of Tyre Nichols, retired a day before a disciplinary hearing on the case. A whole day before. Now, typically you get notice of this in advance. And let's just talk about how you retire for a minute. I don't know how many of you have been involved with working as a government employee or working in generally just about any employment capacity now. When you get ready to retire, let me come back on the camera so we can talk about this. When you get ready to retire, it's generally not this thing where you're going to show up one day and say, "Hey, I'm retiring," and all of the paperwork goes through that day and you're done. The boxes are checked, you're escorted out, you're done. Typically, with more organizations, it requires you, especially public organizations, they require you to jump through a few hoops before you retire. They check to make sure that you've got all of your service in. They go over all of your benefits that might be remaining, for instance, health benefits. And in some cases, they tell you you have to put in that request days, months in advance. I don't even want to quote. I remember one employee that I had working with me, and she was getting ready to retire. Well, she gave us notice months in advance because she needed to make plans and make sure, because of the way the retirement system was set up, that everything was done beforehand. So there wasn't this sort of situation where she could just pop up and retire in a day. So it's very interesting here to see in this circumstance that he retired a day, it says, before this disciplinary hearing. And let me make sure I pull this back up so that we can get back on the page and look at it. So it says here, he retired a day before a disciplinary hearing on the case, which means it's likely he put in the paperwork for that way in advance of that date. It's March now. Apparently he's got like 30 something years in, but we're going to go to that. Let's finish this Facebook post. It says here, it is extremely disturbing that Memphis police accepted the retirement of this senior officer. Well, let's talk about that also. In some cases, the way things are set up, once you hit those numbers, if you go back and look at I mean, it's typically an employment contract in regards to your retirement benefits. You've got federal laws, and in some cases, maybe even state laws that these retirement systems have to work under. And so it may be very difficult to, at the last minute, try to deny him benefits for something that he has paid into, unless you already have policies and rules and laws in place that allow you to take that away. And so he knew the deal. It looks like he was very up to speed in knowing that, hey, I'd better go ahead and retire so that I can still get my benefits. Otherwise, I might be out of that. Now, in most cases, he would get back the money that he put into the system. He just would not get the full retirement system benefits. So there is a difference there. They're not going to be able to just keep his own money that he contributed to that program. But as it's saying here, unless there's some sort of criteria in place that takes that away from him, then if he meets the criteria, they're going to have to give it to him. I could imagine their personnel officer felt a little conflicted about this, having him come up and say, hey, I'm going to retire now. And they're just like, okay, but there's this decertification going on, or what's going on with him? Can he retire and still get benefits? There were probably a number of questions going on in the background, I can imagine. I've also seen some reports that members of the city council were upset about this too. It says here, and it sounds like this is maybe from some of the decertification documents here. And again, this is just me making an analysis and bringing some things up based on what I'm seeing here. I have not had a chance to see the decertification documents like I did with the other officers. It says he observed Tyre's dire medical conditions. He didn't direct immediate medical attention. When notifying Tyre's parents of the beating, Lieutenant Smith told them he was involved in a DUI or on drugs, and they could not see their son in the hospital following the encounter. Now, these are all very problematic here, especially, if they were going to be able to show video where he was there, saw that he saw Tyre Nichols and did nothing. That was likely going to be a problem for him. And then this piece about these statements that he supposedly made to Tyre's family members, I guess his parents, it says here, told him that he was involved in a DUI. During a hearing, I can imagine the question would come up: who told you that? Where did you get that information from? This information about him being on drugs, where did you get that information from? And why did you tell the parents that they could not see him? All of these would be questions that he would have had to answer if he had participated in the hearing. And then the last piece says Memphis police and officials should do everything in their power to hold Lieutenant Smith accountable and not let his cowardice in resigning sidestep the consequences of his actions. So it's going to be interesting to continue to follow this to see if there is any basis for the city saying, hey, you didn't do your job here, and there may be some continuing repercussions. I don't know. We're going to have to see how that goes. As you can see here, here's the article. Let's go to the actual article that he attached here. Police supervisor in Tyre Nichols' case retired a day before hearing. And this is the article that Attorney Ben Crump had placed in his Facebook post. And so I want to go down here, first of all, and read this statement, because I could not find this on Attorney Crump's Facebook page or his website. And typically he's been providing press information there, but I could not find this. And so let's go through what this statement says and talk about this. The Nichols family and their legal team are deeply disturbed that Memphis police allowed and accepted the retirement of Lieutenant Dwayne Smith in light of his immediately pending disciplinary hearing for his decisions and behavior related to Tyre Nichols' death. And let me stop here for a second, too, because this allowed and accepted. There was an instance where I was involved with someone's retirement, and there were questions about, whether or not this person could be allowed to retire. I mean, there are criteria. So it may not be this cut and dried case where he can just fill out the paperwork and automatically get this retirement. Like I said before, there are criteria in place, and this just is problematic. I don't know how else to say it. We believe Lieutenant Smith was the highest ranking officer at the scene after the brutal beating, and we've seen that Smith observed Tyre's dire medical condition and did not render or direct immediate medical attention. So here it is. He actually says in this statement that it looked like he went over to Tyre and saw Tyre there and did nothing. Further, police reports indicate Smith failed to fully assess the scene or examine the facts behind the officer's narrative, which was false. Tyre's parents believe Smith was one of the first officers who came to their house and told them about Tyre's beating, said Tyre was involved in a DUI or on drugs, and did not tell them about the severity of the situation or allow them to see their son. In fact, Tyre's mother asked if she could see her son in the hospital, and Lieutenant Smith told her no. We call for Memphis police and officials to do everything in their power to hold Lieutenant Smith and all those involved fully accountable and not allow Lieutenant Smith to cowardly sidestep the consequences of his actions. His cowardice in resigning and not facing his own disciplinary board to defend himself is not an end around on accountability or reckoning. So again, there is this question here about whether there can be some sort of clawback here. Now, there's still the decertification piece. Forget the hearing. That's done. He didn't show up for that. But then there's this, is there some way to claw back the benefits? Is there some way to still hold him accountable for what he did not do that night, which was part of his duty to do? And that is essentially what they are asking in this statement, or what they are stating should be done. And then it goes a little bit over some of what we already knew was going on with this case. But it says that Smith concluded that Nichols' condition was a result of having consumed intoxicants, and told him, "You done took something, man." And so he, this piece about just stating that, it says he later was heard telling family members that Nichols was in custody for DUI, which, there's a whole narrative here that what is being said by Attorney Crump is that you did not investigate this narrative. Part of your job as a supervisor is to make sure you fully assess the situation when you come on scene. And for some reason, he looked at Tyre and just did not assess what he saw, or chose not to. It says the investigator stated that Smith walked away from the active scene before an ambulance arrived and did not document the incident in detail in his report or to investigators. And let's see, it says he was also administratively charged with neglect of duty, making unauthorized public statements, and failure to comply with regulations. Another thing that they had said was he did not have on his body camera like he was supposed to. I think I saw that in another article. This is the city of Memphis has requested the state peace officer standards and training commission to decertify Smith as an officer. So again, this should bring you up to speed. This article, has provided some of the details here. Yeah, this is the part where it says he did not provide the body camera, but this statement that they put out again tells us a little bit more about what was going on. And this article sort of sums it all up for us. And this is what they had pointed to from Attorney Crump's Facebook page. So if you get a chance to check that out, you may want to do so. So that sort of brings us up to speed with this case and this update about this officer retiring. And like I said before, there had been some rumblings about this, some rumors about this. And I think a lot of people in the press were just waiting to get the official report before they started reporting on it. That way they could be true and put out information that they felt they had fully vetted. But now we know, one day before retirement, Lieutenant, oh my goodness, Lieutenant Dwayne Smith did retire from his position, I think after 30 plus years in law enforcement. And there are a lot of questions that are being asked about how he was allowed to do this. So now that you are up to speed with what is going on with this retirement, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and peace. Mwah.